In Sprint 2, I was focused mainly on getting the attendance taking function and some of the validators that go along with it completed. This meant that making a login screen, along with the incorporation of that login screen and its functions into my database, I set my goals for this sprint as follows. First, to build a front and back end attendance taking concept that will allow for a student's attendance to show whether they are present, absent, or excused. Second, I will build a front to back end length function for the login that will follow the following guidelines. The approach must be object-oriented. The object-oriented approach will be responsible for granting permissions. And it will show when there's a problem with the login so the user can fix that, such as not entering the correct password or username, or forgetting to enter your password altogether, if you somehow manage to do that. Third, it will set up an application that will have easy navigation between their tabs. And fourth, I will build a screen that will be the same exact size as an iPad screen. This will allow for an easier development to both the iOS and Android development platforms down the line. By doing all of the above tasks in Sprint 2, I hope to be well ahead of the game to be able to hammer out some of the other tasks I have planned for this app. The front-end to back-end development by then will be well understood and will streamline the entire process moving forward. My user-facing demo will be using the same SQLite database that I used for my first demo. Here I have 4 tables, 3 of which have been used so far. My student table has, I think it's 350 records that are all populated, and they include the first, middle, and last names, the PSU IDs, the PSU emails, gender, rank, file, section, year and band, and then these last 5 here are all permissions. So squad leader, guide, section leader, officer, and administrator, these are all going to be permission levels for down the road development. So any of these, you'll see it in my code later on that I have enabled and disabled some buttons for specifically administrators or for specifically guides. So this table right here is my login table. This has the PSU IDs and passwords of all of the students. Again, these are all fake passwords, but I made them all password 1, 2, 3, and all the way up through whatever, just by dragging it in an Excel sheet and importing it. And lastly, this is my attendance database, so I'll get to this later on when we're actually taking attendance. So for a quick user demo, let me start this. Okay, and so what you'll see here, I have just a login screen here with asking for the ID and password. So I'll go over here to my table really quick. I'll go to login and I'll just let me pick somebody that is an administrator first, so that it'll be a little bit easier to show you all of the function that I've put in so far. So here is DHT, and let me just expand this a little bit, 1561. So if I go into my login table and I filter it by PSU ID and I go in DHT 1561, so I'll just enter that in. I haven't fixed whether or not it has to be capitalized or lowercase yet. As of now, everything is capitalized. So I have the correct password, but for the instance of this, I'm just going to enter the wrong password so you can see one of the validators. So username or password is not correct. It'll add that right to the screen. Let's say that there was no password entered at all. No password was entered. So I have some validators on this front screen already. Let me just log in. So it brings you to this main landing page. There's nothing here yet. This is going to be my focus for the next sprint. But for this sprint, if you go to the attendance feature, this is the main focus of what I did for this sprint. So if I click the Take Attendance button, DHT1561 is the PSU ID of an administrator. So they have this button enabled, and when they open it, they get this. So this is a dynamically built page. It builds based off of who is in the section, how many people are in the section, and it creates one button per person. So here's the H section. So that obviously this is all dynamically built. As you can see, it didn't need to be dragged or selected as I was going through it. So for the instance of this, let us do an attendance from C rank. So right now in C rank, let's say that I try to submit an attendance. Everybody's here. It says select all who are not here. So let me just pretend for the moment that everybody's here, and I hit submit without selecting a date. It's not going to do anything. I haven't added in a validator yet for please select a date, but that'll be the next thing that I add. So what they have to do is they need to go in and select a date, and when they hit submit, so right now my attendance has 2 records in there, so let's hit submit and we'll refresh the attendance column. Now I have 3. So you can see that C rank just entered their attendance. There's 15 people in that rank, as you just saw from the previous screen, and 1 for everybody means that everybody was there. A 0 means that they are not there, and what I'll implement later on is a 2 for an excused absence, or a 3 for a special occasion. So if I go back to the take attendance, let's say that I wanted to take C rank attendance again for C1, C8, and C15. Let's pretend that they're all not there, and I go in and I click this, and I hit submit. What happens when I hit submit, and I'll refresh this, is you'll see that C rank had another attendance taken, rank 1 was missing, rank 8 was missing, and rank 15 were missing. So those were all of the ranks that I had just clicked, and you'll see that they were missing there in the table. So this is the basic attendance idea, and again, this is from an administrator's point of view. The difference between an administrator and a guide is that when they go in here, they have the opportunity to select which rank they're taking attendance for at that moment. So let's say that they wanted to take it from M rank, they have that option. For another example, let's say that they are a guide for a different rank. Let's pretend that they are from rank, let's see here, here's a guide. So AAH1399, let's go into the login table, AAH1399, so their password is 288. So if I go in here and I run this again, 399, and password 288, and I log in, it'll bring me to this screen, and when I click attendance, they won't have that opportunity to select the rank. They're going to be confined to the rank that they're in. So AAH is in the S rank, and as you can see, they only have the opportunity to select S rank. So again, that's just another feature that will be useful within the band for the attendance taking purposes. I won't go any more in depth there, and I'll just get started on the code review. So looking through some of my code, I wrote a lot of code for this one just because we wanted it in that MVC format. So I have individual page for each of those tabs that are inside that main login screen. So each one of these is an independent page that I have hooked up to a login and has its own control file, so you can see announcements, UI, announcements, control. What I did for this is I ended up just using the code generation for the time being. I'll go back and change that later on, but just for proof of concept purposes, I just wanted to get the code in positions that I liked it and specific to that page. And from there, I've just been adding methods. So there's nothing in the announcements one. The attendance UI, I was talking a little bit about how I was setting validations based off of the object-oriented code. So for instance, here's one about the attendance UI. So if a student's a guide, an admin, an officer, a section leader, or a squad leader, they'll have that take attendance button that I had on the attendance tab. So if you're not a guide, squad leader, officer, leader, you're not going to have that. So if I go in here, I log in, they won't have that button. So that's just one of those object-oriented validators that I put in. These are all just the navigation buttons, so if they push the button at the bottom of the page, it'll switch the event. And let me find another one. Student database. So here is where I'm connecting up to my Java database. So I had this one in the last one. I hadn't connected it up yet with my application, so this is the first time you'll see this code. Or this will be the second time you've seen this code because I actually did have it connected. It just had basic functions in. The functions that I added now are the authenticate user. So this is when a user is logging in. It'll select it from that login table, check to see the PSU ID. It'll grab the password and see if they match. If they match, then obviously it'll let them into the system. If not, it'll print out to the command line that they were not authenticated and that they need to that they're not allowed into the app. And then again, this is going to be student has not been found, or this has been student has been found if they have been authenticated. It'll return true and they'll be allowed into the app. So the other thing here is the create student object. So when you create a student object, this is actually called from my student. And these are just all my setters and getters. So that's what I'm using to make this an object-oriented system. I'm passing in, when I log in, I'm basically creating a student object for that person. And they'll have setters and getters throughout the whole system there. So maybe I'll have like a welcome George message, or welcome whoever it is. It's object oriented, so it'll be able to grab that, get first name, get last name, all of that stuff will be object oriented. And it is actually already. So that's how I've been doing the permissions. And this is again, so it's just going to go through, create a student object and return that student object. So the interface controls, this is what I'm using to dynamically populate all of that page, the attendance page. So this is what'll dynamically build. So this will start it with it's just a quick frame, and so this is what I'm going to be using down here. This is the attendance info bit here. So when a user clicks submit, it's going to grab the date and rank that it was submitted for, and also an array list of all of those buttons that I showed you. These buttons are going to be made in an array list, and they'll all be added to another array list of just booleans. And when I pass all of that through, it'll end the attendance UI. So if there's no date selected, like I showed you, it won't end the UI. If there's a date selected, it will. So all of this UI, these are all the initializers. I added an item listener that looks for a state change. That's what dynamically starts the dynamic building of the page when the combo box is deselected and selected into another option. So again, these are just all initializers, and this is the page load. Again, I just used all the drag and drop feature of NetBeans just to do a proof of concept. So these are the submit button. So again, this is for that little window. So it has just a submit button. It needs to make sure that that date pecker has a date in it. If not, I'll put a validator in here. And so this is the rank selector changed. This is no longer used actually at all. So I can actually delete that. And this is what builds that dynamic page. So all this does is it goes through, it has a nested loop function. And what I've been doing is I just have a nested loop, and it starts and ends, and it just builds those 3 columns. And I had to do some basic math in the initializer. If I can pull that up right here in the page load. So it just gets all of the students that are in that specific rank. All it does is it rounds the number up to the amount of students in that rank. It does a little bit of math for me, and I made sure to round up instead of round down so I don't miss anybody, and it places all the students' names. So that is that. And so again, so this just goes through, and it just adds pixels after each one, and it adds more space to each one after it's done. And it just, put constraints, it just lays it out and places it directly underneath the other one, and it adds space in between it. That's basically it. Again, this is the students. This is all the object-oriented setters and getters. The only thing different that I had to do in here was just get file to string. So file is an integer. I needed to figure out a way to get that into a string just for the purposes of printing it out for the dynamic page building, and that was fairly simple to do. And the login controller, so this is what will control all of the login. It just checks to see if they're authenticated. And if they are, it'll print out that they're authenticated and let them in. If not, it'll print out that they're not authenticated and it'll kick them out, or it won't let them in still. And this is just, again, the start and an end function to the UI that's handled and toggled through the control. And lastly, this is just the dashboard control. So this is what opens up that main page after the login. And that's it. So the next sprint will focus on adding more functionality to the attendance screen that will give admins the ability to get a real-time look at what ranks have and have not taken attendance for that specific day. It will also enable users to check their attendance so that they will have the opportunity to dispute any absences. In addition, I will start to focus on the gig sign-up portion of the assignment. This will help me get moving forward with developing more functions that require back-end population or object references. This sprint had a lot of good work, and I look forward to adding more functionality in the next one. I felt like this was the biggest hump I had to get over, and now I'll be in really good shape moving forward to sprint 3.